Dr. Brian Bruess started his educational career at St. Norbert College in De Pere, Wisconsin. After receiving his degree in psychology and sociology, he went on to receive his master's and PhD in college student personnel. After a long career in higher ed, including a presidency at St. Norbert, he was appointed the first joint president of the College of St. Benedict and St. John's University. I sat down with him to talk about his life, the joint presidency, and what it means for the student community. I'm Elijah Browne, and this is JBCN The Sit Down. Hi, my name's Elijah Browne, and today I'm sitting down with President Brian Bruess to talk about the new presidency and the new leadership here at College of St. Benedict and St. John's University. Can you tell me a little bit about your first impressions when you came into the CSB-SJU community?
Yeah, I've really been impressed with, first of all, the passion, the love that students have for these institutions. The sense of belonging and connectedness that they have has been of note. I was able to spend 3-4 days in June and again in July at the reunion, and I got a deep immersion in how graduates of St. Ben's and St. John's feel the passion, the love they have for these institutions and their missions, and a strong sense of community. And Carol and I have really felt welcomed, and so I think that's probably the brightest and most significant takeaway that we've had. Another one would be the willingness of the students and faculty and staff to kind of cut to the heart of the matter and really engage in meaningful discussions real early on. And that to me is another indication of how passionate students and faculty and staff are about these two places, and also how excited they are about the future and navigating through the challenges we're facing.
The first time I met you actually was the student meet and greet that you did back in, well, it was last semester, I want to say either February or March. But what was really interesting was seeing the way that you and Carol interacted with the new community. And it seemed like you're already a part of it, which was great.
Well, thank you for saying that. We feel like we're already a part of it.
So you mentioned before about your time at St. Catherine's, the all-women's university. Can you talk a little bit about how that truly prepares you to be the president of CSB?
Yeah, well, I think it prepares me to be the president of both institutions, and spent 22 years at St. Catherine in a variety of roles. Began really as a dean of students type, and made my way through a variety of different vice presidencies, including that as a CFO for a year. My last couple of years was a vice president, executive vice president, chief operating officer, and that experience gave me a lot of insight into how different parts of a college university operates. But I think more important than that, Elijah, is that I also was raised by the Sisters of St. Joseph's professionally. So I've been a part of a group of religious women understanding what it means to take their charism and their sense of what it means to be a Catholic, in that case, liberal arts women's institution, what it means to take that quite seriously and to really work to incorporate those values into the experience of students and faculty and staff. And so in some ways, that really was a perfect preparation to understand the value of a women's education, but also what it means to develop men specifically as it relates to their development. And it ties back to my graduate program where I looked at the moral reasoning and identity formation of women and men. And that background, that training, and that space at St. Catherine, I think prepared me well just how to manage and how to lead an institution, but also how to have a reverence and a regard for the mission of St. Ben's and St. John's.
The term joint president is thrown around a lot, and there's not a definition out there or any examples. Can you tell us what that looks like in your words?
Yeah, the joint president as a construct should probably be considered in partnership with what strong integration means too. What the common boards and the sisters and the monks have declared is that they believe that the future of St. Ben's and St. John's is significantly advantaged by having a single president, by having common boards of trustees, by having a single leadership team, and really taking advantage of what it means to be collaborative and to be integrated on many, many levels. So the overarching principle of joint president is having someone, a single vision, a single leadership that allows us to be distinctive about what does St. Ben's mean, what does St. John's mean, who are these two institutions, what's distinctive about them, at the same time taking advantage of integration. And I think of it for purposes on two different levels. On one level, it's about being adaptive and responsive and nimble in the face of great uncertainty and disruption in society and in higher education. But the real goal and purpose of a joint president and strong integration is higher order purposes. And those are things like improving the student experience, making sure that it's increasingly more sophisticated to produce better outcomes, higher levels of satisfaction, to be more attractive to students in the admissions process, and to improve the overall student experience. So the focus of joint president and strong integration will be to enhance the educational experience of students to drive better outcomes. Already fabulous outcomes. So it's a position of strength move, and it's bold. There's nothing like it that I've seen where you have two independent corporations held together by a single president, a common board, so 44 people, the same people serving both institutions. It's a really nationally unique model, and one that higher education is watching what we can do with it. And the goal is to create such an engagement with the community to define strong integration, students, faculty, and staff, and have it produce higher order outcomes. And that's, if we've got great graduation rates, let's make them better. If the student satisfaction is this level, let's move it up this level. And that's really the purpose and the power of a joint president and strong integration. And I can define it, but really the community is going to define it. And that's one of our goals this year, is to engage people to help define what strong integration is.
What can students look forward to, or what does that really look like on the student side?
Well, I would say there's more to gain on the student piece of this than anywhere else. Because we can talk about efficiencies and cost effectiveness, which is important, but really students have a lot to gain. And so there's nothing more frustrating, as I'm listening to students already, than to have things done one way on one campus and another way on another campus. So trying to find at the intersection of teaching and learning and the student experience, what are those things that truly would make a difference for students if we did them differently in a more integrated or seamless way. And that could range from a lot of different things. And so really, I think the student experience has tremendous opportunity. So we'll be looking to students. What are those things? I've already heard a lot of examples, but what are those things that students would like to see improved? And how can we increase that experience, make it more vibrant, more engaging, drive up satisfaction and engagement? Those are, I think, two of the most important outcomes. So what collaborations might we see between the two student senates? What sort of similarities might we have with housing policies or other kinds of activities that are important? How do we handle, how we manage and navigate the sense of community and sense of belonging? Those are things we have in common. We don't need multiple sets of approaches to do that necessarily. There's great advantage of collaborating and being more seamless. One idea that I want to offer your viewers and listeners is students come to us as whole people. And higher education is famous for presenting a fractured experience. There's pockets, there's barriers, there's difficulties, there's challenges. Our goal with all this is to create a more seamless experience that's more accessible, that is more welcoming, and therefore produces higher level, higher quality engagement, and then therefore better results. So that idea of creating a more engaged, integrated, responsive environment for students is, I think, going to be the centerpiece of how we focus.
Mm-hmm. I 100% agree with you. That's such a complete way of looking at a person and looking at a problem.
Yeah. The learning environment for students should reflect the philosophy and the mission of the institution of holistic education, the holistic development of students. So defining with faculty, staff, and students, what is the signature experience for a St. Ben's, St. John's student? What makes that really powerfully effective? And what are high impact practices? What are the things that really drive learning and holistic experiences for students? We're going to focus on those things, invest in those more than we already have and in different ways. And it'll probably require not doing some things. So what are those things that we've always done this way, but we want to do them differently? One, what we're going to experiment with this year is with the new students and a single convocation. They usually do 2 separate convocations when they welcome new students. We're going to do a joint convocation. We're going to try some new ways of being in community with each other. And so it'll be a period of time where we hope people embrace the idea of strong integration. We look for possibilities and focus it on picking those things that we think will have the most immediate impact on the student experience.
That's really interesting. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
Yeah. Last year, the CSB-SJU community saw several incidents that harmed everyone in different ways. So what does healing look like now going forward?
You know, that's a great question. And sometimes higher education is a microcosm of the larger societal experience. And college campuses face difficult challenges and incidents all the time. I think the real test of an institution or communities like this are how they respond. And I observed how the 2 communities responded last fall on different matters. And I think we have to recognize that institutions are going to respond over time. So there's phases of healing that need to happen. It begins by recognizing that we're flawed communities and that not everyone feels welcomed in the same way. And it requires us to be intentional, be very intentional. Right now, society is very fractured, very polarized. And so my hope is that the next coming few years will focus on what I call the power of the interpersonal and really tending to the person across from you and really listening, demonstrating empathy, and really listening really deeply. And that's part of our Benedictine tradition, listening with the ear of the heart and really tending to people and their needs and being intentional about it and really valuing those kinds of leadership traits, all of us. It's also going to require us to just be in conversation. You know, how do we do this better? How do we improve different policies, different procedures? And how do we raise the bar? One of the things that I would assert is that one of our Benedictine values is hospitality. And on one level, it's about opening a door and welcoming someone and greeting people, but it's a much more powerful concept than that. And that concept of hospitality means that every person should feel welcomed. And when they feel welcomed into a classroom, into an athletic team, into a dining hall, into a residence hall room, into an interpersonal conversation, they feel valued. And when a person feels valued, their potential to flourish is unlimited. But when they don't have that basic sense of belonging and feeling valued, it's really hard to open up and flourish and to grow. Mm-hmm. And so we should think about our responsibility around healing and hospitality and the dignity of the human person, which is a part of our values as well. We should think of those not just as concepts that are passing in nature, but foundational to our learning and our responsibility as members of this community. And if each person every day could approach every interaction with that kind of intentionality, really tending to the people around them, then I think that healing will be accelerated. And we can't rush it, but we have to really, truly attend to it. So it's that kind of intentionality and really openness to sharing information, engaging in conversations, and really treating each interaction as if it's as important as it is. And right now, I think with the epidemic of loneliness and isolation coming out of the pandemic, this kind of coming together and being in community, doing it intentionally and being really faithful to our values is going to be critical. And I hope that's what characterizes the coming weeks and months and even years, because we have a lot of work to do.
100%.
Yeah.
How does CSB and SJU plan on creating a safe community for the marginalized students who are a part of it?
That's a great question. Well, first of all, I think the 2 institutions are doing a fair amount already to create welcoming spaces and provide resources and support for students. But I think it's also incumbent upon each member, harkening back to my comments about hospitality, is to take this responsibility fully on. If each person's tending to this, creating an environment of welcoming and hospitality, that helps. At the same time, the institution needs to make more investment in how we create policies and procedures and programs to support students and marginalized groups. One of the most important things we're doing to support the program and staff we already have in place is hiring a senior diversity officer. That search is now been launched. It's a national search. And our goal is to hire a senior diversity officer who will be charged with helping the community build an infrastructure of policy programs and support that creates an environment that is responsive to the needs of our communities so that all feel welcome and all have access. And really building momentum, more momentum toward our aspirations of EDI-BJ work. And all those requirements, those constructs of equity, diversity, inclusion, belonging, and justice need to be represented in the curriculum and the co-curriculum. They need to be represented in how we create a climate to support students. They need to be represented in how we recruit and retain and develop faculty and staff of diverse backgrounds and students. And that whole enterprise of equity, diversity, inclusion, belonging, and justice work is absolutely at the center of our mission.
How do you personally fit into all of this?
Well, personally, it's a daily question for me. You know, what is the president doing day in and day out to support these aspirations? What is the leadership that I give to my leadership team? Do I make that expectation clear? Do I facilitate and encourage and support policies and practices that reflect our values? Mm-hmm. So for me, it's very personal. And I think we all have to take it personally. And so I think your question about what's it mean for the president is significant. Part of my responsibility is to articulate the vision, to help garner resources, and to make sure that we have accountability to these aspirations, to these goals. And we have to recognize that it's complicated work and it takes time, but we have to have high expectations. And I think for me, the president of the two places, the primary responsibility right now is to articulate vision and expectations. So this is my sense of what the community is telling me. So the will and the desire of this community is to have a more just, a more equitable, a more inclusive, and an environment that encourages and facilitates belonging and learning. So I'm going to reflect first the vision that I'm hearing the community asking of itself. And then from there, and from all the good work that's already being done, we're going to continue to make increasingly more shared progress on this work. And so it does begin with personal responsibility.
It really does.
Yeah.
What I and a lot of other students want to know is, with the schools remaining separate but under the same leadership, what does that mean for making students of all gender identities feel represented?
You know, that's a great question. I do not think of the schools as being separate with a common leader. I think of what we're asked to do is to establish the distinctiveness of the two institutions, what makes them distinctive, but also really knitting together what do we have in common and what, by way of strong integration, can allow us to create an environment that's more responsive to students. And we have a responsibility to do that for all students, regardless of their gender identification. And so to what extent are we engaging students in the understanding of what gender is, what it means? To what extent are we engaging students in knowing these questions in the curriculum and in the co-curriculum? Our responsibility, and as the president, one of my primary responsibilities is not to do this for the community, but to create conditions so that the students and faculty and staff retain their agency in doing this work together. And we have a tradition, long-standing tradition, as a college for women and a university for men. What does that mean today in 2022? What will it mean in the next 5 to 10 years? And what competencies and knowledge and expertise do students need to have so they can be effective leaders in society, able to navigate work groups, challenges, and address the perplexing problems of society? Students need to know how to understand and how to engage with all sorts of issues on difference, including gender. So I think our primary responsibility is to create an environment where we can learn and know and discuss. So how do we do that in this societal milieu with the polarization we have? Well, it begins by creating spaces and opportunities to engage in respectful civil discourse about what the differences are and holding each other accountable as we move through this journey of understanding and exploring. And that's essentially a part of who we are. That's our mission. One has a tradition of a college for women, one has a tradition for University of Men. These are great traditions. But what does that mean today?
Okay, so this is the final question. Going into the new school year, the new presidency and the new model of leadership, what's one thing that you want the students to walk away with from this interview?
Well, first, Elijah, thanks for being in the interview and asking such great questions. What I want students to know about this moment in time for St. Ben's and St. John's and this new leadership and governance approach for this year is that we expect to engage students in the conversation, to help define what strong integration means and help define our future together. And our focus will be on offering an increasingly more sophisticated student experience and knitting together your experience so it's more meaningful, more purposeful, and producing even greater outcomes. So we look forward to being in partnership with you for your voice coming forward and helping us shape the future forward for St. Ben's and St. John's. And myself and Carol, we're really excited to be here and to be in this conversation and on this journey with you.
Thank you so much for sitting down with us, President Bruess, and thank you everyone at home watching.